Chopper to the left side. Third baseman Suarez has it. Soft toss through.
One of the biggest complaints sports fans have when it comes to baseball is that the games are just too long. It's an issue that Major League Baseball has been trying to fix for years. In 2021, the average length of MLB games peaked at 3 hours and 10 minutes. This isn't too far off from the average length of an NFL or college football game. But the NFL regular season is only 17 games, and compared to MLB's 162-game season, the average fan has to invest way more time just to keep up with their favorite team. This is where a sense of loyalty comes in. Many baseball fans will gladly dedicate their spring and summer to watching their favorite team. They'll watch year after year of losing seasons just for the chance to hopefully one day see it all pay off. This could not be more true right now than for fans of the Milwaukee Brewers. The team's history is full of losing seasons, and only in recent years has the team been able to consistently make the postseason. While making the playoffs is definitely a step in the right direction, those few good seasons that they've seen have only led to heartbreak. The Brewers might be in a good position right now, but their early history was full of disappointment and losing seasons, with the 1984 season being one of them. That season saw the Brewers win just 67 games, and they finished with the worst record in the American League. In May of that season, the Brewers would travel to Chicago to play the White Sox. The White Sox have had their own history of losing. In the last 100 years, the White Sox have only won a series in the postseason 3 times, and all of them happened during their run to the World Series in 2005. The 2024 season saw Chicago reach rock bottom, as their team finished with the most losses in modern MLB history. Their history of failure rivals the Brewers, but on May 8, 1984, these teams were not looking to compare their disappointing histories. They were trying to win a baseball game. A game that would go on for more than 8 hours. Maybe it makes sense that two teams with long and agonizing histories would take part in the most time-consuming game in MLB history. I mean, why not add to the frustration by being part of an 8-hour baseball game? But at this point in 1984, both the Brewers and the White Sox had much bigger expectations than being another forgotten MLB team. Milwaukee was just 2 years removed from appearing in the World Series, and even though the Brewers would fall to the St. Louis Cardinals in 7 games, there was no reason to think that they couldn't still contend. The 1983 season saw them take a slight step back as they failed to win their division and make it back to the postseason, but it was a new season, and there was still no reason to think that they couldn't be contending for the World Series. The Chicago White Sox went into the 1984 season with similar expectations. In the season prior, Chicago dominated the American League West, finishing 20 games ahead of second place. But in the ALCS, their dominance was silenced by the Baltimore Orioles, losing the series in 4 games. They would have to wait until next season to try again for the World Series. In early May of that season, both teams would face each other for a 3-game series. At this point, the Brewers and the White Sox were not off to the starts that they were hoping for. For two teams trying to make it back to the postseason, not even having a record above 500 is a rough start, but it's still way too early into the season to write either of these teams off. Looking at the Brewers in 2025, it would have been really dumb to say that their season was over just because they had a 500 record in early May. The first game of the series was your standard game of baseball. The Brewers would get out to an early 3-run lead, and any attempt from the White Sox to make a comeback was met with Milwaukee continuing to put runs on the board. The White Sox would lose the game, but they would still have an opportunity to win the series. All they had to do was win the next 2 games in order to win the series. It's not the most amazing accomplishment to win 2 out of 3 games in a regular season series, but it would get their record back on track, and give the team a little bit of momentum towards making it back to the postseason. Unfortunately for Chicago, it would not be that simple. On the mound for the White Sox is pitcher Bob Fallon. Fallon is given the tough task of outdueling Brewers pitcher Don Sutton, who was already well on his way to the Hall of Fame. Fallon seemed ready for the challenge, and as he threw the first pitch, the clock began. The first inning was nothing exciting. Fallon would force a groundout on the first batter, and after giving up a walk, he was able to get another ground ball that turned into a double play. Don Sutton would struggle to begin, but after giving up 2 walks, he was able to get the final out with a weak ground ball to second. The second inning was more of the same. Fallon shut down Milwaukee with a strikeout followed by 2 flyouts. Sutton followed suit with 3 quick outs. This was pretty much the story of the game for the first 6 innings. Bob Fallon gave up a hit in the 3rd inning, but recovered with a strikeout and then a ground ball for a double play. Chicago would have a chance to score in the bottom of the 3rd, as Rudy Law and Carlton Fisk hit 2 singles to give the White Sox 2 runners on base with 2 outs. Sutton was not fazed. He struck out the next batter and kept the score tied at 0. The starting pitching was doing more than enough to shut down each team's offense. Bob Fallon was doing a great job keeping pace with Don Sutton. Sutton was doing as expected, shutting down the White Sox all game. That was until the 6th inning. Sutton would strike out Fisk, but would give up a hit to first baseman Greg Walker. No big deal, Sutton was able to get the next batter Greg Lazinski to hit a pop-up in foul territory. Walker would then steal second, giving the White Sox their best chance at scoring since the 3rd inning. But with 2 outs, this was not much stress for Sutton. Harold Baines was next to bat, and he would hit a fly ball in foul territory near third base, easily catchable for the 3rd out. Only third baseman Randy Reddy would drop it. That mistake would lead to Harold Baines drawing a walk. Instead of getting out of the inning, there were now runners on 1st and 2nd, and Sutton now had to focus on the next batter and shut down another scoring chance for Chicago. Left fielder Tom Paciorek would make the Brewers pay for their mistake. His single to left field would score Walker, giving Chicago a 1-0 lead. Sutton would get the next batter to fly out to right field, but the damage was done. The White Sox now had the lead. But the lead wouldn't last long. Fallon walked the first batter of the 7th inning, and Salome Barojas would enter the game to replace Bob Fallon, who overall pitched a great game. Barojas could not say the same. Facing his first batter of the game, Barojas would give up a single that moved Reddy to 3rd. He would immediately give up another hit, and Randy Reddy was able to redeem himself for his error and score Milwaukee's first run. And just like that, the game was tied. Barojas would not face another batter, as he was quickly replaced by Britt Burns. Facing a tough situation with no outs, Burns had no trouble shutting down Milwaukee's scoring threat and getting out of the inning. The White Sox couldn't get the lead back in the 7th. Don Sutton kept shutting down Chicago's lineup. He would exit the game after the 7th inning, and while it wasn't a perfect performance, it was good enough to give Milwaukee a chance to win the game. The 8th inning was quiet. Burns would give up a couple walks to the Brewers, but he got out of the inning with a couple strikeouts. Pete Ladd would replace Don Sutton on the mound for Milwaukee, and he kept up Sutton's performance with another easy inning. At this point, it was just a matter of which team would break first. Things would heat up in the 9th. Robin Yount led off with a double, giving Milwaukee their chance to score. And they made it count. Cecil Cooper would ground out, but as Ted Simmons was batting, Yount stole 3rd. A bad throw from White Sox catcher Carlton Fisk gave the Brewers the lead for the first time all game. Milwaukee wasn't done scoring. Simmons hit a single, and after a wild pitch moved him to 2nd, Ben Ogilvie had a hit that scored Simmons. The Brewers now had a 2-run lead. Chicago was able to limit the damage by getting both Ogilvie and Bobby Clark thrown out when they tried stealing 2nd. The White Sox were facing their last chance to score. Down 2 runs, Chicago had 3 outs left to somehow salvage this game. Rolly Fingers would enter the game for the Brewers to shut down the White Sox and get the win. A fly ball hit to right field was a good start for Milwaukee, but Brewers right fielder Charlie Moore would drop it. It was the 2nd time Milwaukee had dropped a fly ball, and Chicago would make them pay for it again. With 2 outs, Julio Cruz hit a double that would score Paciorek, and Rudy Law followed by hitting a single that scored Cruz to tie the game. Fisk would strike out to end the inning. If Charlie Moore had caught that ball, this game would be over. Milwaukee would have won, and this game would have been forgotten about, just like any other game. But fate has a funny way of playing out. Now it was time for extra innings. At this point, the game had been going on for about 3 hours and 5 minutes. We're not even halfway done. Al Jones enters the game to replace Burns as the pitcher. He gives up a walk to Dion James that gives the Brewers an early base runner, but Jones gets it together with a strikeout followed by a flyout. James attempts to steal 2nd, but he can't beat the throw, and the White Sox get out of the inning. After a big 9th inning, Chicago's offense goes quiet. A groundout from Mike Squires, followed by a strikeout by Dave Stegman, and then a groundout from Harold Baines ends an uneventful 10th inning. Both teams would do a good job in making sure things would remain uneventful. Jim Sundberg leads off with a single, but thanks to horrible base running, he's thrown out by the center fielder while trying to run back to first. A flyout by Yount and a strikeout by Cooper ends the top of the 11th. Tom Paciorek leads off with a single for the White Sox, but that would only be followed by a flyout and then a ground ball that gets turned for a double play. Nothing would change in the 12th. Chicago's pitching gets 2 quick outs, and even though Rick Manning gets a pinch hit single, a ground out from Janes ends Milwaukee's scoring chance. At least Milwaukee is getting hits. The White Sox hitting has gone ice cold. 2 groundouts and a strikeout end the 12th. Going into the 13th inning, the Brewers decide that it's finally time to wake up. Jim Gantner leads off with a single. Randy Reddy lays down a bunt, which does lead to an out, but it moves Gantner over to second. All Milwaukee needs to do is get another hit to score the run. With only 1 out, this was their chance to take the lead back. But Al Jones is not taking chances. A good pickoff move catches Gantner off guard and leads to the second out of the inning. Had Gantner been more careful, he likely would have scored the run because Jim Sundberg got the hit the Brewers needed. Instead, there are 2 outs with a runner at first. A strikeout by Yount ends their hope of scoring. The White Sox would have their chance to score after Harold Baines hits a double with 2 outs. Milwaukee intentionally walks Tom Paciorek, but the 13th inning ends with a flyout from Vance Law. Juan Agosto replaces Al Jones on the mound. He did more than enough to shut down Milwaukee and send this game to the bottom of the 14th. The White Sox were ready to end this game. A leadoff single gives them a base runner. After forcing a flyout, Tom Tellman is replaced by pitcher Rick Waits. Chicago immediately begins to hit off him. Rudy Law hits a single that moves the winning run to second. Fisk follows with a single to left field. The hit wasn't able to score the run, but it gave the White Sox a chance to finally end the game. Waits wouldn't let that happen. He strikes out Mark Hill and gets Stegman to fly out to end the 14th inning. If Chicago couldn't score with the bases loaded and only 1 out, there was no way of knowing when either team would finally score a run. Both pitchers are shutting down any hitting. Top of the 15th, fly ball, ground out, ground out. Bottom of the 15th, ground out, strikeout, ground out. Even if the Brewers got 2 singles in the 16th, it didn't matter. A bunt for a ground out and then a ground ball for a double play would end it. Bottom of the 16th, ground out, fly ball, ground out. Nothing changed in the 17th inning. Ogilvie hits a fly ball for the first out. Rick Manning gets a single and eventually steals second after another flyout, but all that leads to is Gantner hitting a fly ball for the 3rd out. Bottom of the 17th. Fisk flies out, but Hill hits a double. With just 1 out, could Chicago finally get a hit to score the run and end the game? Of course not. Stegman strikes out, and Baines grounds out to end the inning. 17 innings of baseball have been played. 506 pitches have been thrown. The fans that bothered staying at the game have just seen 8 extra innings without a single run being scored. 5 hours and 29 minutes have passed. This game has to end at some point. And the game did end. At least for the day. Due to American League rules, no game was allowed to continue past 1 in the morning. When Baines had grounded out, the time was already 1:03 a.m. The rules meant that the game would be suspended. Both teams would just have to resume the next day. Brewers manager Rene Lachemann was very critical about his team. He knows this game should have never gone to extra innings, and he is absolutely right. Milwaukee had multiple opportunities to win this game. If Randy Reddy doesn't drop that foul ball in the 6th inning, Chicago doesn't score a run. If Charlie Moore didn't drop an easy fly ball in the 9th, the White Sox would have never scored the tying run to send the game into extra innings. But that's not what happened. Milwaukee's untimely errors and Chicago's timely hitting sent the game into extra innings. 8 extra innings of baseball were not enough to decide a winner. Someone was going to win this game. It just wouldn't happen until the next day. 17 hours later, and the game has resumed. Both teams are ready to end this game no matter the cost. Reddy leads off the 18th inning with a double, and a sacrifice bunt by Bill Schroeder moves him to 3rd base. Yount is intentionally walked. Why would the White Sox do this? Because Cecil Cooper hits a ground ball that gets turned for a double play. Bottom of the 18th, Chuck Porter enters the game to pitch for Milwaukee. He's supposed to be the starting pitcher for the next game, but things are desperate. No one wants to lose this game now. The loss would just be too severe. The White Sox know this. Paciorek hits a leadoff single, which is followed by a bunt from Vance Law that leads to both him and Paciorek being safe. Another bunt moves Paciorek and Law over into scoring position. Cruz hits a pop-up for the 2nd out, but Milwaukee decides to walk Rudy Law. All Chicago needs to do is get a hit or draw a walk and they win this game. That doesn't happen. Porter gets out of the jam and strikes out Fisk. Juan Augusto is still pitching and still dealing. He forces a flyout from Simmons, a strikeout from Ogilvy, and a flyout from Manning to give Chicago another chance to win this game. But the White Sox can't put it away. After a rough 18th inning, Chuck Porter settles in and forces 3 quick outs. The game has now reached the 20th inning. Mark Breward leads off with a single for the Brewers. With Gantner up to bat, Breward is going to try to steal second, but the White Sox are not about to give Milwaukee any free chances. He's out. Gantner isn't going to be much help anyway. He hits a ground ball for the second out. Reddy follows with another ground out to send this game to the bottom of the 20th. Chuck Porter is going to do whatever it takes to keep this game going. He makes quick work of Tom Paciorek and Vance Law, and even if he gives up a single, Porter just fires back by getting Cruz to ground out to end the inning. Top of the 21st, Ron Reed enters the game to replace Juan Augusto. Augusto leaves the game having thrown 7 scoreless innings. Reed is looking to do the same. He strikes out Schroeder and gets Yount to fly out to right. Cooper hits a single to put a runner on base, but with 2 outs, all Reed has to do is strike out Simmons to get out of the inning. Reed doesn't strike him out. A walk puts Simmons on base and moves Cooper to second. But the situation is still the same. 1 more out and the inning is over. In steps Ben Ogilvy to try and somehow get a hit and score a run. Reed throws the pitch, and there it is. 12 innings of baseball and 3.5 hours later, someone has finally scored another run. Ogilvy's home run puts Milwaukee up by 3 runs, and as the ball sails into the empty bleachers, it's hard not to feel that this game is over. Who cares if Rick Manning struck out to end the inning? The Brewers firmly have the lead, and there's no way the White Sox can climb out of a 3-run deficit after being completely inept on offense. And it seemed like that would be the case. Rudy Law steps into bat and hits a soft ground ball to third. But before I show the rest of this play, I need to ask a question. Have you ever had intrusive thoughts? You know, those thoughts that tell you to do something harmful like hurt someone or commit a crime. Of course, you would never act on these thoughts, but still, sometimes they just pop up. Well, I can only assume that Randy Reddy let the intrusive thoughts win. Oh no. Reddy's throwing error puts Law safe at second. Fisk steps in and hits a single to right field, scoring Law. It's now 6-4. Hill follows up with a single that moves Fisk to second. Richard Dotson steps in to pinch run for Hill. If he scores, this game will be tied. Porter is able to get Stegman to strike out, but he can't do the same with Baines. Chicago has the bases loaded. There's 1 out. With 1 swing, Tom Paciorek can decide the fate of this game. He made it count. A single to center field. Fisk scores. Dotson scores. 6-6. The game is now tied. In the most absurd series of events, the White Sox have just scored 3 runs after not having scored since the 9th inning. With the winning run on base, can they get 1 more hit and score the winning run? No, of course not. A ground out followed by a fly ball ends any hope of this game ever being over. It's hard to come up with new ways to narrate the same thing. Top of the 22nd inning, Breward flies out, Gantner flies out, Reddy strikes out. Bottom of the 22nd, Cruz grounds out. Oh, Rudy Law lays down a bunt for a single? Doesn't matter. Fisk hits a fly ball for the second out, and Reed grounds out to end the inning. Top of the 23rd, Schroeder and Yount both hit fly balls for 2 quick outs. Cooper keeps the inning alive with a single, and Simmons is able to give Milwaukee a chance by drawing a walk. Chicago is not messing around. They immediately pull Reed and put in Floyd Bannister. If you're keeping track, that is now the 13th different player to pitch in this game. Ogilvy steps in again to try and score another run, but Bannister does his job and gets him to fly out to end the inning. Bottom of the 23rd, Stegman leads off with a single. Baines hits a fly ball for the first out. Paciorek is up to bat, and he hits a single that moves Stegman to third. But Stegman is feeling aggressive. He wants to win this game, and he decides to round third base and head for home. Third base coach Jim Leyland is desperately signaling for him to go back. They lightly collide with each other, and Stegman scampers back to third. But the umpires ruled that their collision was interference, and Stegman is called out. Only one thing can be said about this. How does this happen? Seriously, how does the winning run of the 23-inning, 7.5-hour baseball game get called out for interference? And the worst part is that if Stegman had just stayed at third base, he would have scored. Vance Law hit a single that would have scored him and ended this nightmare. But nope. We're still here because both of these teams just love to torture their fans. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Top of the 24th inning. Bannister is shutting down the Brewers. Manning flies out. Brewer flies out. Gander hits a single, Berggren strikes out for the 3rd out. Bottom of the 24th. Cruz flies out. Law grounds out. Fisk hits a double, but with 2 outs, Chicago is relying on Bannister, their pitcher, to get a hit and win this game. A pitcher getting a hit practically never happens, but with the way this game has gone, it wouldn't be much of a shock if that's how the game ended. That wouldn't happen. Bannister grounds out, and this game goes to the 25th inning. Tom Seaver enters the game to pitch for Bannister. Seaver is supposed to start the next game, but sure, why not pitch in this game? At this point, it's almost embarrassing if you didn't pitch in this game. After giving up a hit to Schroeder, Seaver goes to work by getting out to hit a ground ball that gets turned for a double play. A fly ball from Cooper sends this game to the bottom of the 25th inning. Strategy and logic can be forgotten. At this point, either team just needs one player to be the hero and hit the ball. Will it be Dave Stegman? No, he strikes out. What about Harold Baines? Actually, let me talk about Harold Baines. His name has been mentioned a few times, but I haven't done justice as to just how good of a player he was. Baines was the first pick in the 1977 MLB draft, and he quickly proved why he was. His hitting ability was a huge part in helping the White Sox reach the postseason in 1983. He would finish his career as a 6-time All-Star, as well as recording 384 home runs and well over 2,800 hits to go along with a .289 batting average. He may not have won a World Series as a player, but his sheer hitting talent would see him get inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. His career saw many great moments, but arguably his best moment? Putting the most time-consuming Major League Baseball game out of its misery.